Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. The privilege of being a physician is one I don't take lightly. I am always amazed that my patients put so much trust in me as we walk together towards optimal health. I also thank you for enjoying this podcast. And although our relationship is not the same as the patients I see in clinic, I hope the conversations I have with my guests allow you to grow and learn like the patients I serve in my clinical practice. And as you can see, I'm at work while I'm recording this episode for those who are watching the video. Our growth requires continuous learning and hearing from others whose approach may add additional value to our lives. So, as we enjoy today's guest, just plan to walk away from this conversation just a little more ahead of the game, a little smarter than you were the day before. And if you do just that, you'll be well on your way to having a body you've always desired and having the type of health you've always wanted. Today, I want to introduce you to Esther Blum. Esther is an integrative dietitian and high performance coach who has helped thousands of people permanently fix the root cause of their health struggles and heal themselves. Esther is a widely respected industry expert and the best-selling author of Cave Women Don't Get Fat, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, Secrets of Gorgeous, and the Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous project. So she totally understands why it's important to protect your nest and has learned the keys to healing from chronic diseases. She now uses her knowledge to help others achieve their goals and is married and is a mom and is here to share her unique perspective. And with that, Esther, welcome to Protecting Your Nest.
Thank you, Dr. Tony, for having me.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to grow and learn. And I think there's so much I'm learning every day as I sit in my office that there's so many people who have yet to hear the healing message, and that being healthy is really more about root cause, not putting a Band-Aid on things. So I think if people understand that better, and that's our job, is to spread this gospel of healing, I think that the world's going to be a better place. And I'm so happy you are willing to share some of the struggles you've had. And let's go ahead and walk through that a little bit. You've overcome some struggles, and you've beat mercury and mold toxicity and battled Epstein-Barr virus and had some issues with insomnia. So let's talk a little bit about what that battle was like and what led you to this healing approach.
Well, I'm still actually going through a mold remediation in my house, and I found out I had chronic Lyme. So I'm still very much in the treatment. I really have utmost respect and appreciation for my body because it endures a lot. It's trying to do a lot. It's trying to handle neuroinflammation and gut, a lot of toxins in my gut right now and going through perimenopause. I'm now 51. So I'm grateful every day where I wake up and I know who I am and where I am and really can work out and treat patients all day and take care of my family and feel really blessed and happy. So the mindset is a big chunk of it. There were many years where I was very sick and couldn't even get out of bed. And that was really, really hard. And on those days, I would say to myself, and I mean, when I was getting 2 to 4 hours of broken sleep, not even consecutive per night. And I would say to myself, just make your bed today. Just make your bed, because then you will have done one thing that's productive. Just start off the day making your bed. And it's funny, my son he's a freshman in high school, and he's reading a book by a retired Navy SEAL, and it's called Make Your Bed. and he always talks about the importance of just, mentally doing that. And I always walked every day, no matter how sleep deprived I was, no matter if I had brain fog and was depressed, I would get outside in nature and get the natural light in my eyes and in my brain without sunglasses, because that is a very important part of a healing practice, is to be exposed to a spectrum of broad light. It resets your circadian rhythm and helps with melatonin production at night. And walking is just a great fat burning activity. It's wonderful because part of my healing journey too was I lost my tolerance for heavy exercise. So now, I used to lift weights a lot. I ran a marathon, and now I could not. I don't think I could run 5 miles. So, always figuring out different ways to make my body strong, moving to lighter weights, but heavier reps, using more body weight, and just slowing down the tempo were really important. And the other piece of my spiritual emotional practice I use to really get me through the dark times, and I still do it because I just love it, is nightly meditation, like a gratitude journal, and really, really taking stock in the good of the day and not letting the small stuff bother you. There's the 10-10-10 rule I learned, which is this going to matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? And if the answer is no, then don't sweat it. Just hit the reset button, reboot, and do some meditation, get some sleep, and you'll be okay. So those practices are really foundational. Walking outside, getting fresh air, appreciating your blessings, and meditating. And the rest, it's just a lot of patience to let your body lead you and tell you what it needs, and give yourself
Yeah,
grace, right?
I love it. I mean, if you think about it, I wonder if people come to a podcast or a YouTube video and they have their notes and they're ready to write down, okay, let's hear what the expert has to say. And you're like, sleep, get your
Sleep.
rest, meditate. It's like,
Okay, can we talk about sleep for a second?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
so for those of you listening, I'm on Instagram at Gorgeous Esther. Okay. I did a poll in my stories. It's no longer up. As this podcast will be released, it won't be up. However, I did a post in my stories, right? I wrote about sleep. I wrote a meme that just says, turn off your phone by 8 p.m. Like nothing good happens after that
That's
anyway,
right.
right? So then I did a poll in my stories. Okay, how many of you are on your phone past 9 p.m.? It was 78%. How many of you are waking up at least 1 to 3 times a night? And it was like 63%. I was like, guys, when you have that phone, let's talk about the importance of technology, because it's like the great new threesome, right? Not to be racy here, it's a threesome. It's you, your partner, and your phone, or it's just a hot love affair between you and your phone. And the phones now, the 5G technology is military grade. Okay. That's not meant to be near a civilian's head. When you're trying to, you know, uh, look at, use that technology for military grade actions, you don't need that in your home. So you definitely don't want it in your bedroom. The bedroom is for sleeping and sex, not technology or reading. Reading's okay. So you want to make sure that your phone is off, because it's too tempting to check it. It's too tempting. So you want to make sure your phone is off by 8, 9 p.m. the latest. Like by then, anything else can wait. It really can. Now, and it should definitely not be next to your bed. People will tell me, but I need it for my alarm clock. If you use it for your alarm clock, turn it on airplane mode, but it's still too tempting to me to have it right next to you. So get a battery operated alarm clock. You can get them at the drugstore for $10. And that has no light to wake you up, no electricity near your head. Or if you really, let's say you're a caregiver or you've got a teenager who's driving out on the road, and put it 10 feet from your bed. But be in the mindset that there shouldn't be, if you have like a smaller, apartment or a small living space and your routers are all in there, just, you can shut them off at night. There are apps that shut down your technology. It is a huge disruptor of sleep. And there PubMed published research that shows that the cell phone technology increases the thickness of the adrenal cortex. So it's very, very dangerous in terms of giving you a prolonged stress response, which will in turn cause insomnia, weight gain, type 2 diabetes, like all sorts of complications. So be very careful of your real estate with technology and get your sleep in. Oh, I can't hear you, Tony.
Oh, okay.
There
My
we go.
fault. Thank you. When you think about your comments, they're different, right? I mean, how often our clinicians they focus on phones in the sense that it's a distraction, et cetera, but not often are we talking about the radiation, the 5G and 4G electromagnetic radiation. And I remember, and I didn't learn about this until I did some functional medicine training myself, and how you literally, even if you're in an apartment building, I mean, imagine how much radiation is in a building. Everybody has a phone, everybody has technology and Wi-Fi, and you're surrounded by it. So you almost have to, I've seen examples of how you can kind of surround your bed with like a nice protective cover so that the radiation won't get to you and your partner. So there's a lot to learn. And that's part of why I think these discussions are important, because even recently in one of my classes, we talked about how, walking without your shoes on is actually a good thing, right? I hadn't heard of that. I'm like, what do you mean?
Grounding.
What?
Yeah.
Like, walking barefoot is going to be a good thing. And I had never heard that before. So I think
Yeah.
these types of ways of thinking forces us to become simple again. But I just think there's just needs to be an awareness, so they're aware. I may need to make some changes. I may need to now. For me, I'm a medical director. It's hard to turn off my phone because when my clinicians don't respond, I have to respond. So I have that barrier. But again, what I tell people: look at your situation, do what's gonna that you can do within the context of your life, but always look to continuously improve. What can I do better today that I wasn't able to do yesterday? And I think that's really important. So I like your kind of taking us down a little bit of a different path. I also know that you have a lot of energy. You're very positive. You've been through a lot. You're still going through a lot. And my question is, how do people get past their self-limiting thinking, or they struggle to kind of just allow themselves to be happy and satisfied with life? Do you have any additional tips you can share about that?
Well, you have to really be connected to why you want to change. That's where I start, is having a really strong reason why you're doing what you're doing. For example, you're probably treating people because you want to change lives. You want to impact the quality of someone's lives and give them the tools they need to heal and live really happy, healthy lives, right? So it's not too different for me. I know that there are, I'm the advocate for a lot of women who are going through perimenopause and menopause. They are told to go on a birth control pill or put in an IUD, or, I've heard some real cockamamie advice given to women going through menopause, or just your blood work's normal for your age, and like go home and sit and shrivel up like a prune and do nothing. They're just not given any tools. So my fire is to be the voice and the advocate for women who need good medical care. Now, I do treat people who are not women or going through menopause, and the same rules apply. I am their advocate. If their doctor doesn't listen to them, I help them find a new doctor. I have a client who's super inflamed and has a history of cancer and obese. And I said to the doctor, he needs a continuous glucose monitor. And the doctor said, we won't prescribe that for him. So I said to my patient, can I help you find a new doctor? Yes, we found a functional medicine doctor, and the rest was history. He said, thank God I don't have to spend time fighting for my health anymore. So, but for people who can't get out of their own way, you have to think about why you even want to get better, or stop drinking a liter of soda a day, or stop smoking, or whatever your health struggles are. Because if not, it's just something a doctor or a nutritionist is telling you what to do. But if you don't feel the motivation, it's impossible to overcome that.
Yeah.
So that's a really important starting point. And then sometimes for people who don't want to get out of their own way, they'll come to me wanting to get better, and we spend about half an hour on the phone discussing, really unpacking the mental blocks, and they just may not be ready either. And that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. I'm like, I don't think I'm a fit for you now. Come back if you know, 6 months, a year. But right now, you know, you don't want to have someone who's also not ready to change on either side. And it's okay. We're not always ready to change. Sometimes too, like there have been times in my life where, you know, I just invested a lot of money and time trying to heal with the right doctor and wasn't getting better. And I would take a break for a while. I was like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? I need time to not take a million supplements, to not focus on every single thing I put in my mouth. I need to just loosen up the reins and play a little, and then I'll come back to it. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, figuring out when you're ready. But I often will say to people, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you'll feel ready. You're ready to
That's
fight for yourself. Even if you don't know how to get there, if you know you want to get there, that's half the battle.
that's right. This awareness that um, meeting people when they're ready and
Yeah.
helping them when they're ready is important. I think not only for the patient, but those who provide care. And a lot of times, what I've found is, even today, as I saw patients, there were people who came to me and they were in crisis or they were in a struggle. And, you know, why am I spending, you know, all of this time pushing the narrative of maybe fasting or carb reduction or whatever? And they just told me they're in crisis. So it's very important that when people are in crisis, you address the crisis and
Yeah.
you remind them that it's okay to not focus on this other part of their life that may help them down the road. But it's okay to let's address the crisis. The good news is that how we deal with a crisis is better if we eat better, if we exercise, and all those things. So you have to kind of balance those two, and I think that's really the key. So I know we both. I know you've been trained in nutrition. I'm being trained in nutrition, and of course functional medicine. And there's definitely an emphasis on fruits, veggies, grains in my training. I know you know, you've had training in nutrition as well. So what's been your experience with those types of recommendations? Was it really emphasized? Was it, you know, what kind of feedback can you share? Because a lot of times I know our next generation of professionals are, you know, being trained with ways of thinking. And I'm curious how you were trained and did you have to tweak any of that? Did you have to modify any of that based on your own personal experience?
I was trained, I have a bachelor's and a master's in clinical nutrition, and we were trained on the food guide pyramid, which is designed to make us fat, sick, and obese. You know, the whole base of the pyramid is 6 to 11 servings of starch a day.
Yeah.
No wonder we're fat. Hello, that is a ridiculous amount. And you know, fruits and veggies, everyone can agree fruits and veggies are good. Okay, unless there's like a couple of really extreme carnivore diet people that don't even agree with veggies, you know, and so believe there's a bunch of veggies that make you toxic or that are toxic. But for the most part, you know, it was the dietitian schooling. The food guide pyramid was bread, then like fruits and vegetables, and then, you know, meat, tiny bits of protein, and fat, tiny bits of fat.
Mm-hmm.
My food guide pyramid. So I wrote a paleo diet book for women, but men, of course, can read it too, called Cave Women Don't Get Fat. I flipped the food guide pyramid upside down. You have to earn your carbs. Most people are not metabolically fit enough to be eating enough carbs. So the base should be, yes, veggies and some fruits, then protein, then fat, then carbs at the tippy top, the tiny bit at the top. And again, if you're metabolically lean, if you're active, you're not gaining weight or body fat on carbs, great. Then, you know, you have metabolic flexibility. The average American who's obese does not.
Right.
They do not. They are insulin resistant, overweight, taking metformin, taking a blood pressure medication, taking a statin, and don't forget the reflux medication. and are on a CPAP machine. These people are not earning their carbs right now.
That's right.
And the way to earn your carbs is through getting some of the weight off by balancing your blood sugar, right? And eating real food, shopping in the outer aisles of the grocery store with the produce, the proteins, and maybe some root vegetables. Okay. And it also entails daily movement. Can I curse a little on this project?
Yes.
I call it the MYA program, the Move Your Ass program. Okay. Uh, that means you got to walk. You
That's
got to
right.
walk. I'm standing right now as we do this podcast, right? You have to move. You can't sit on your tuchus all day. Even if you have a desk job, get a workout in the morning, get a walk in the afternoon or evening, and move. And then you also need to do some strength training, some resistance training a couple times a week to build lean muscle, because lean muscle is far more metabolically active and will help you sensitize your cells to insulin better. So again, it's very foundational and simple. It's like eat good food, move your body, get some sleep. Nothing here is complicated aside from the cost of groceries. Most of it's free. Like, okay, maybe you have to buy a pair of sneakers to walk in, or maybe you don't. You walk barefoot on the beach and you don't need
Yeah,
running shoes. So a lot of this is very low cost and simple, but most people want a quick fix and most people don't want to take their time doing it,
that's
you
right.
know? So it's the gloriously boring, consistent, unsexy actions that really yield the greatest change over time. And I always tell my clients, like, if you can eat the same way on a Tuesday night that you did on a Saturday night, that is consistency.
That's right. Okay. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. And I just wanted to ask that question because I do worry a little bit that if we are kind of needing to follow recommendations that are not making sense,
Mm-hmm.
and that are not helping patients reach goals, then we have a new generation of advisors in the nutrition world who may not understand fully that that old food pyramid is probably not a good idea for most people.
Yeah.
So, and that's an understatement. Sometimes it's perplexing for anybody listening or watching. Just search USDA food pyramid, and when you look at the foundation, it's a lot of pastas and breads and
Yep.
grains, and you're like you're just kind of shocked. And I recently tweeted, um, what the food in the hospital looks like, and I think it
Oh,
was raisin bran that was
oh,
38 carbs. I think there was some French toast that was 16, and then there was a couple other items, of course, orange juice, and
of course. Of
when
course.
you and a bagel, by the way, and when you add it all up, I think it was 130 plus carbs, and divided by 4 got us into 30 plus teaspoons of sugar for breakfast for a diabetic. So if
Ugh.
we follow guidelines, which we're kind of expected to in the hospital, we're expected to as clinicians, we're expected to as dietitians, of course, which is part of our clinician world, trouble's on the horizon. So I appreciate the fact
Yeah.
that you were able to, as I did, I realized that what was being recommended wasn't working. More importantly, I realized that some of the recommendations were based on epidemiological studies, which really didn't show causation. And it was that research that said, well, are there studies that do show that there's another way? And the good news is that there are. So we can actually rely on randomized controlled trials in nutrition that can serve us. And one of the reasons that this is important, because there was this fear of eating red meat, and we know now that maybe it's not as scary as we thought. So when I meet new patients, they're always a little shocked when I say that one of the ways to heal may be from red meat, and they're looking at me like deer in the headlights. So in fact, yesterday I think I had steak for lunch, which is really interesting. So talk a little bit about the fear of red meat, how you've kind of had to kind of face that, and what kind of allowed you to not fear it so much?
Yeah. Well, also remember that big ag and big food sponsors the food guide pyramid. So
Oh yeah.
one of the sponsors of the American Dietetic Association is Coca-Cola.
Mm.
So it's money, it's lobbying. This country puts profits before people.
Mm.
So don't believe any box that makes a claim, like Cheerios makes a claim to lower cholesterol. That is absolute hooey, BS, whatever you want to call it. It's absolutely not true. Meat is one of the most nutritionally dense foods on the planet, containing iron, protein, B12, and zinc. And it's the most upsetting to me to try and push a plant based agenda on people, and especially of school children who often rely on schools for their breakfast and their lunch. They may not be getting a nutritious meal at home. They may not be getting food at home. A lot of children are insecure. A tremendous amount of children are insecure food wise. And so you want to take away the one place that's going to give them eggs or cheese or meat and make them go plant-based. That's a very privileged agenda that is doing a huge disservice for our children and their growing needs and things like that. So with people, though, there are very few studies to show that with a good design,
Mm-hmm.
that show that red meat is detrimental to our health. And in fact, I've been a clinical dietitian for over 27 years, and I've never seen anyone's health get worse on red meat, except there is an exception, okay? If someone has a fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease from obesity, women going through menopause can develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. For a time, I will take them off animal proteins, or at least reduce the intake to once a day instead of 3 times a day. And I'll do that for, a couple months just to clean up the liver and enable it to go through. But the majority of people are so protein deficient. And red meat, and especially, the studies show it doesn't matter. I mean, pastured and grass-fed meat is much better for the environment and more humane for
Oh
the
yeah.
animals. But the research shows, and it does have a higher concentration of omega-3s, but the research shows even, non-organic conventionally raised meat is still so rich in nutrition and so beneficial for humans. So why do we need all this red meat? Well, we need it to build lean muscle. We need it to be satiated.
Yeah.
Protein with a little fat in the meat sustains your blood sugar for up to 6 hours after you eat it. You need it to sustain your serotonin and dopamine. I can't think of, and protein is also the only nutrient that shuts off hunger in the brain. So we have a nation of obese people who are eating less meat and eating more carbs and getting fatter and sicker. It's like the movie WALL-E. That movie I found to be so disturbingly accurate. Even when it came out, like the state of things now is just a travesty, really. So you want to make sure that we're reintroducing meat. Think of how your grandparents ate. I mean, I went to my grandparents' house on the weekends. They had a farmhouse. They would grill steaks every week. We had lots of meat there, and we had their farm fresh vegetables and some potatoes, and that was it. And my grandfather lived to be 105 and a half, and
Mm.
radiant health. He was an amazing doctor. So yeah, think of what your grandparents ate, right? They ate red meat, butter, milk, eggs, whole foods. Once we started introducing all the processed foods in the 50s, that's when rates of heart disease skyrocket, and all the white flour products and
That's right.
chemical junk.
Yeah. And I think as you mentioned white flour, I think how we help educate people about what processed food is, I'm not sure everybody understands that. Like pasta, for example, it's nothing but flour, but I don't think the average person is thinking that's processed food. It was freshly prepared pasta, and in their brain, that's a good thing. and they don't realize that those highly refined grains are going to have a negative impact on our body. And then all of that stuff has to eventually turn into glucose. And again, the average pasta dish is easily 40 plus carbs, and divided by 4 is at least 10 teaspoons of sugar. So, and our bodies don't like all that extra sugar. So it's actually very interesting. So I feel better about my steak for lunch. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I also want to understand. So if a patient comes to a clinician, is still struggling with the information, being a little skewed, you know, I'll tell patients, well, let's see where you are. Let's measure some things. And then let's see how you do after you adopt a diet that maybe has the meat in it, maybe reduces the starch and processed food. So are there things that these patients should be asking their doctors to order to monitor how they're doing? I mean, how did you work collaboratively or yourself ask them to get certain tests to see how they're doing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just to go back to your earlier point of how do people know if it's a real food? So if it doesn't swim, run, fly, or grow from the ground, it's
Right.
not real food. If it's in a red neon, plastic label with an ingredient list with 20 to 30 ingredients and you can't pronounce half of them, that's not real food. The real food is on the outer aisles of the grocery. Your
Yeah.
meats, poultry, fish, eggs, your root vegetables, your sweet potatoes, your white potatoes, your squashes, you can get dried beans and legumes, and or canned is fine, and also fruits and vegetables and good fats, olives, avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, right? If your diet is that, you're gonna be absolutely radiantly healthy. So what are some of the tests that I do? Well, I look at always vitamin D first and foremost. But I look at inflammatory markers. I look at something called CRP, that's C-reactive protein, to tell me if there's infections versus inflammation. I will look at lipoprotein little a. I will look at homocysteine to predetermine your risk for cardiac disease or tell me if you're deficient in B vitamins. Then I will do a complete thyroid panel, and most doctors run a TSH, which is like one slice of the pie. So I'll do a complete and full thyroid panel. I will look at particle size of cholesterol. Triglycerides are another good one. Fasting insulin, glucose, and hemoglobin A1C to tell me if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. So just starting there, and of course, complete blood count. But just starting there is so telling. And I have helped many of my patients pick up on having autoimmune conditions, on being very high risk for heart disease or having some low-grade chronic infections, just based on blood tests. And I do additional tests, but those are kind of the foundational. And I have a new patient. I've been working with her like 2 months, and her C-reactive protein when we started was 10.5. And I have a text from her that just said, I got her doctor's note. Oh, and it said, I'm just reading it real quick. Yeah, it went from 10.7 to 7.8, which is still above normal, but much, much better. So, this is all reversible. I do these tests to empower and educate and say, where are the red flags? Because we're going to put those red flags to sleep before they really cause problems.
Yeah, it's very helpful to have data, particularly when you're still, challenged with a narrative that will be in the opposite direction of your recommendations. So when you have data that people can use, it's very important for anybody listening. Make sure to understand, since the rest of the world hasn't really caught up, you may want to make sure that the insulin level is covered and the APO, all the things, APO, lipoprotein B, whatever you're measuring, just kind of get a feel for, is it covered, is it not covered, just so you'll know what you're investing in. But it's really important to do these things because we all like to see ourselves, be successful. And if I am going to put the work in, I just want to make sure I'm making the right choices. And we only have one life and we only have so much time. So we want to make sure we're moving in the right direction. So to hear you read a C-reactive protein that did get better, that's a win. I'm very
Yeah.
happy for her and for you
Yeah.
as you kind of coach her along your way. So a lot of people listening to this podcast are obviously, kind of reducing their processed foods, and they're reducing their carbs, the ones that are harming us. And just, let's be clear, all fruits and vegetables are carbs, but we're just trying to get real carbs in our body, things that
Yeah.
really add value. And so when you think about pros and cons of carb restriction, when you're talking to your clients who may desire that approach, low carb or keto or anything like that, how do you approach that type of client?
It's funny. I've only had two people in my practice who asked me to go on keto diets, but I don't put anyone on keto diets. I don't need to go to that extreme to get results. And the problem is with keto, and I wrote about this in Cave Women Don't Get Fat too, with regards to intermittent fasting. The studies are primarily done on men. They're not done on women with a fluctuating menstrual cycle. They're not sustainable for a lot of women. And if you have a thyroid condition, you don't want to go too low carb because carbs help convert T4 to the active form, which is T3 of thyroid hormone. So I find the women who have done keto, who have been successful, have done it to alleviate hot flashes in menopause, or who've done it short term. Short term, it's fine. 1 to 3 months, no problem. Past that, the adrenals tend to get very stressed out and tired, and your cortisol production either goes sky high and crashes or is rock bottom. And the thyroid tends to tank too. So it worked really well the first 1 to 3 months, and then it stops working. And then women are gaining weight. They look at a banana across the room and they gain 5 pounds. So I end up having to do reverse dieting and dieting them up and slowly and incrementally increasing their carbohydrates. And the other thing I see in keto, I do stool testing and look at the microbiome, and I do see altered gut function and some dysbiosis with people who have done keto diets long term. I can tell when someone's been eating just an excessive amount of red meat, which is hard to do. But some people do it and their gut microbiome is not happy and quite imbalanced. So I find it extreme because for most people it's not sustainable, but it does seem to work better for men than women.
Yeah, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you have a slightly different perspective, because one of the things I've learned when I listen to a lot of podcasts that have an audience that may be leaning in a particular direction, I think that they don't always hear a different perspective. So, and I almost feel like my audience and my patients who find me first, they self-select for a doc who's trying to do exactly what you said only a few people have asked you to do. So I see people coming in asking for a low carb or keto all the time because they see me on a podcast or,
Right.
and so I think that, so some of it is self-selection. Some of it is, um, individuality. So I've probably seen more patients who are female struggle than males. That's for sure. Definitely have tons of females who have been successful. So I think the other thing I'll say is, and I agree. When I learned as in my functional medicine training, one of the things that they talked about is, your gut microbiome. And it's kind of a mixed bag, because in my obesity training, we learned that if you have a certain type of diet, you may then shift to the right type of bacteria that'll be more beneficial, and your diet will just do it on its own. And some of the studies that are done, they're not really done on carnivores. They're not done on keto people. So it's kind of they're comparing to like a regular standard American diet. So I think there's a lot of factors, but I want people who are listening who, if you're a keto or low carb or even a carnivore and you're listening, don't change the channel just yet. Just understand that you have to like be open to the idea that every intervention is going to be individual, and see what your body is telling you. Now, if you hear what, is being stated, it's going to help you know, well, maybe if I'm struggling, there may be a reason for it that they didn't have on the brochure for low carb or keto. And now you need to start problem solving and try to figure it out. So now you have in your toolkit some additional knowledge that maybe females will struggle. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I think it's important that we keep it as a broad approach, because Dr.
Yeah.
Eric Westman's research, he's been doing low carb since 2002, and he has thousands of success stories. And I think that we have to make sure we're kind of thinking about it broadly, so that when people struggle, they can kind of look for answers, et cetera. And one of the reasons why I love functional medicine clinicians is that they will absolutely look at the world through a lens that their conventional doc won't, and they will discover things like bacteria over, SIBO, for example. They'll discover stuff. The other doctor's not even looking for it. And we really want to make sure people are able to do that. So I really appreciate your thoughts on those concepts. That's really important.
And just,
Yeah,
if I can just add one more thing, there is a difference, I believe, I don't know if you do, between low carb and keto. So I'm not saying I'm against low carb. That I'm against the right amount of carbs where you still see fat loss, but and you're metabolically lean, but you're also insulin sensitive. But that's different than a keto diet, which is just super, super high fat and moderate protein and like super low carb, like 40
I'm so happy you said
grams.
that, because I would, when I learned keto in the beginning, it was definitely a low carb, high fat diet. My approach now is it's a low carb diet. So in other words, a lot of people who have stalls in their weight loss and things like that, they're adding fat wherever they can, and they're really emphasizing the fat. What I've learned from my colleagues who do research, and what they do is they focus on carb restriction primarily, and not on adding all of this extra fat. So I think that, not that that wouldn't work for some people, but in my world, that's all I'm actually asking patients to focus on.
Yeah.
And then we problem solve if they struggle. But again, I think it's all about, there's so many ways to define this stuff, and that's where we run into problems, because people are defining it. My patients don't. There's apps like I like Carb Manager, for example, but my patients are not, measuring how much fat they're consuming in a day. I don't even mention fat when we have our conversation. So I think now if I'm being educated by somebody who is doing that, that's going to become my emphasis. And I'm like, I didn't get enough fat for today, and that's a bit much. Now, if if you have seizure issues or some neurological issue, and it's a therapeutic ketosis, you really do want to have ketones at a certain level for that to work. So I think it just depends, but most of our patients are not doing it for that reason. So, but that, again, this is what's good about this discussion, is that it provides some nuance, some perspective. And I just want people to be thinking outside the box a little bit as they make their own decisions. So I want to ask you a little bit also about, people who are in a weight loss journey. Sometimes they're being asked to portion size or to count calories. How much emphasis do you put on that?
Almost no emphasis on calories unless I'm dieting them up and I say you need to slowly increase, and we really, go 100 calories at a time. We really incrementally diet someone out. But no, I don't count on calories. I really focus on macros and optimizing protein intake to the tune of 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. And then I calculate out carbs are usually 30%, fat 30%. But again, metabolic individuality for sure.
Okay. And
So yeah, some people do well fine with 100 grams of carbs. Some people do fine with 150, depending on how much they're lifting and working out.
that's right.
And then some days they get more carbs and some days they get less. We play depending on workouts and workout days too. And the
Yeah.
timing. Yeah.
Defining those goals are so important. And you're right. If you're really active, lifting weights and things like that, you definitely
Mhm.
may have more wiggle room, and you're probably more metabolically fit in the first place. So
Yeah.
do you recommend supplements? People are taking supplements
Yes.
a lot because of COVID and other reasons. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on supplements?
So in my practice, I do hormone and gut testing. So I recommend, and I do those extensive blood tests. So I recommend supplements once I have tests back. Usually nobody comes into my practice until they've had all their testing done. So I joke that I'm a dietitian, not a magician. And so I test, I don't guess. That being said, let's say you're like, no, I just need a couple of basic foundationals. Of course, vitamin D, you want your blood levels to be at least 60 nanograms per deciliter. So oftentimes in the winter, I have people taking 10,000 units a day. And in the summer, 0 to 5,000, depending on your sun exposure. Digestive enzymes are key. We can be overweight and completely undernourished. And a lot of that starts with a lack of digestive fire. I have seen more problems caused from low hydrochloric acid than anything else. And we need our stomachs to be a cauldron of fire. So this helps us absorb our nutrients and break down our food. But B, it helps prevent bacterial overgrowth and yeast and pathogens that wouldn't otherwise be there if we had optimal hydrochloric acid. And it also helps us maintain a really healthy environment in the gut, in the small intestine. So digestive enzymes, fish oils are wonderful anti-inflammatory, very cardioprotective and neuroprotective. And a multivitamin with a good B complex. I see a tremendous amount of B vitamin deficiency. And then certainly magnesium at night for some sleep, zinc, just some really good foundationals. But typically I say work with a practitioner, and by all means, like really use practitioner grade brands. Like I have on my website a full script account. People can order, practitioner grade supplements there, because I don't want people buying products with a ton of fillers and just wasting your money. Back in the day, my parents would say, I'm taking a one a day. And I was like, or a Centrum, and I was like, you guys understand there's more fillers than active ingredients in these. And it's just dye and chemicals. And it would be like 2 milligrams of B6. I was like, what is the point? You could have better results just waving a bottle of vitamins in front of your face at that point. So so I'm like,
Yeah.
work with a practitioner. You're not qualified to make these choices for yourself, people, because you read it on a blog of someone who doesn't have a medical practice. Like go to a practitioner who sees people day in, day out, who understands the proper and targeted way to supplement. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money, A. And B, you can't out supplement a poor diet or lifestyle. So you always need to make sure that you have to earn your supplements. You start with your diet first, you get your sleep, you get your exercise, then you add in your supplements from there.
Yeah, I know that's true. And there's so many people who are looking for that answer. And again, a lot of the things that you mentioned earlier were just fundamental lifestyle changes that people need to make. And those are the things that are going to help us the most. And you kind of started the podcast telling your story a little bit. And I know in our functional medicine training, it's all about telling the patient's story. So why is it important for clinicians to do that?
Oh, well, it's funny. I mean, I put it on my website, but I really don't talk about it when I'm in with patients. But yeah, I mean, I think
Not your story. I'm talking
oh,
about knowing their story.
knowing their story. Well, because you have to understand. Thank you. I was like, what? You have
Yeah,
to
no.
know the whole person. You have to know who they are as a person and what pieces come into play that are going to influence their body's ability to heal and their behavior. So, often on the intake call, I've been very intuitive about this because I've helped so many women who are sexually abused, emotionally abused. So I will often ask point blank, just on the intake, have you been raped? Have you been sexually molested? There's a lot of worthiness and safety around eating and food and self care that you need to address. And when necessary, I bring in my dear friend, Dr. Don Wood. He's a trauma therapist. He helps people through all sorts of traumas, but just having traumas from younger years can flatten your cortisol curve because your body just permanently thinks you're in fight or flight and doesn't understand you're not in danger at this current moment. So trauma work's really important. Also, I like to know, were you fat shamed as a kid? Did your parents say you really shouldn't have, that you don't need that extra piece getting a little thick around the middle? And then that also creates a lot of shame and guilt and a restrictive mindset around eating. And so I try and undo the damages and all those years of internal messaging about yourself and your relationship with food and your body. So those pieces cannot be ignored and have to be brought into the equation. And then again, if you're just like a busy person who has a business and a family, you don't have a lot of time to cook. I want to know that. I want to know if you're a caregiver. I need to know you intimately as a human so that I can, really address, like, if you're not cooking, great. What are pre-prepared things we can do? I've one client or patient who, he's a caregiver for his wife who's sick and cancer, and she goes on a trach at night, and he's running a business and taking care of her. So I literally have gone around Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, and I snap pictures of things that he should buy that are already prepared or
Yeah.
ridiculous easy to prepare, and text them to him. And one time on one of our sessions, he said, I can't make a protein shake. I said, why? Do you need a recipe? He said, no, he was like terrified to make a protein shake. I
Mm.
had him bring his laptop into the kitchen and I talked him through making a protein shake. Now he makes them every day. Had no idea how to cook or find his way around the kitchen. So, those things
Wow.
can be really transformative for people. So I try to just know who they are so I can meet them where they're at.
Yeah, it's hard to coach people if you don't know who you're coaching. So I think it's, you got to know these little nuances. And again, it could be the simplest thing, that'll help people through their journey, and maybe helping them to avoid a trigger, maybe take a different route past the Krispy Kreme place, instead going to a different route, and whatever it is, right? So I think that understanding who you're talking to is critical. So appreciate that. Now we're wrapping up, and I do want to reflect a little bit about how you're going to protect your nest. So rather it's nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, focusing on your thoughts, and or healing from trauma. And then our rope allows us to focus on our relationships, avoiding harmful organisms, pollutants in our environment or in our food. And then, of course, making sure the E is reminding us to protect our emotions and making sure our life experiences serve us. And that's all functional medicine tree stuff. That's where I came up with that. So my question is, when you think about your next year, what areas do you plan to focus on personally?
Oh, well, I'm writing my next book. It comes out September 2021. It's going to be on menopause. So protecting my mental real estate and my stress is really important because stress and creativity do not work well together at all. So staying loose. I've hired more people this year to help so I can delegate pieces of my business that bring me no joy and only bring me stress. So I've delegated those out, and planning more vacations, man. We were
Mm.
locked up in COVID, so I was saying to my husband, I was like, okay, this is when spring break is, and we gotta go live our life. And we planned our winter vacations. I have a getaway weekend in 2 weeks with friends, and I was like, we got to just, the vacations to me are, if you're working this hard and you don't take a vacation, what is the point of living? Even if it's if money's tight, just I did plenty of staycations, through COVID where you just don't work, you just take off work. But if you can afford to go away and just get a change of scene, that is to me pure bliss.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a traveler as well, and I'm definitely was in low carb USA in San Diego, but in terms of just me and the wife just doing some stuff, it's time. So I agree 100%. So as we wrap up, in terms of other ways that people can find you, reach you, get your books, etc., what would you say?
Yes, you can go to my website, estherblum.com. And I have a free 3-part video training series on how to crush your cravings. It's really useful. There's an ebook at the end. So it's at estherblum.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Gorgeous Esther. It's ESTHER. And I'm on YouTube also as estherblum.com.
Nice. And thank you. And my mom always said I was a good looking child, so I like that gorgeous. Got to go with it, right?
It's from my first book, Eat, Drink, and Be
Oh, cool.
Gorgeous.
I see it. Awesome.
So
I love it. I love
there
it.
you
So
go. Yeah.
I
So the
love it. So
gorgeous.
shout out to the parents that let us know we're beautiful. And I
That's
thank
funny.
you with your beautiful self, I guess I'll say that, for being here and sharing a different perspective. I really appreciate it, and hope my audience enjoyed you as we wrap up this episode. So thank you again. Okay, Esther.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Tony. You're beautiful too.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's funny. And again, I want to thank my guest for just sharing some of her struggles and how she was able to overcome them, and I think this provides hope to anyone who's had similar challenges. And, we got a nice reminder that red meat's okay, and it's okay to eat it for breakfast and lunch. And also a reminder that maybe for some people may struggle with low carb or keto. So you need to listen to your body and do what's best for you. And for those who are on that journey, continue to do it if it's working for you. And I appreciate her perspective. And so as we wrap up another episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast, it's becoming clear with each and every episode that, it's really about just getting started. Esther had to get started at some point, change her life. She's doing that with her clients. And I want you to get started if you're checking out this episode. So, it's my belief that, my guests will really help us, heal. And it's like magical, but it's so simple. It's just, eating real food. That's the first step. And then you have to figure out what approach is best for you. So whether you're getting started or adding to your knowledge, make a commitment to making you your number one priority. And this approach, is really important. It may even seem selfish to put you first, but you'll later discover that once you do that, you will find so much more you can give others because you took care of yourself. So again, I hope today's episode provided some insights that you didn't have before you started your journey with me today. And I'm looking forward to continue further episodes down the road. So guys, until we meet again, be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. And thanks again, Esther, for being here.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.